The purpose of this podcast is to educate and inform. It is no substitute for professional care by your doctor or your qualified healthcare professional. Never disregard or delay professional medical advice because of something you've heard on this podcast or in any linked material. Guests who speak on this podcast express their own opinions, experience, and conclusions. Dr. Shirley neither endorses nor opposes any particular opinion discussed on this podcast. The views expressed on this podcast have no relation to those of any academic, hospital, practice, institution, or other entity with which Dr. Shirley may be affiliated.
Welcome to Forever Fab, the podcast on fashion, the art of living, and all things beauty. This podcast is curated by Dr. Shirley Madhere, MD, as the definitive source of holistic wellness through beauty.
This episode of 15 Minutes of Fab on the Forever Fab podcast is dedicated to peace. And the title of this episode of 15 Minutes of Fab is Mankeeping. Have you ever heard of mankeeping? Well, it's trending right now and women are being quite vocal about it. This episode discusses what it is and how to keep your man while keeping your boundaries at the same time and keeping them secure for your well-being. So every once in a while on this 15 Minutes of Fab episode, I like to share something new that I've learned. This time I'm discussing mankeeping, what it is, how to identify it, and basically what to do about it. A recent London Times article was entitled, Mankeeping. Are you your husband's BFF, therapist, and PA? Stop for a moment, think about it, and answer that question. According to this article in the London Times, quote, the term was coined by Angelica Puzio-Ferrara, a social psychologist at Stanford University who researches male friendship. In a 2024 paper studying the role of primary emotional caregiver, therapist, confidant, social coordinator, etc., some women end up taking on all these roles in a heterosexual relationship, end quote. When I think about the definition, knowing that the answer to the question is yes, I then question myself. Where did this behavior come from on both parties' side? How did I allow it to happen? What is my role in mankeeping? Do I have a need to people please? I used to, but that is far gone now. Have I self-sacrificed too much? Maybe. So I looked into the issue a bit further to learn more, and this is what I'm sharing with you today. Alicia Lassman writes in the HuffPost Online that, quote, women are now 23% less likely to want to date than men, not because they don't care, but because they feel they've invested too much emotional labor without support in return, end quote. Aha, that word, that concept, that goal, reciprocity. It's not always the norm in a relationship, nor is it easy to find in any relationship. It seems that men in general expect that women console and comfort them even when they do wrong, as men feel that this is a natural part of the relationship and perhaps an expected role for women to play. Many women, on the contrary, feel that this role or expectation is more like work or hard emotional labor. Ms. Lassman adds, quote, the anxieties surrounding what it means to be a man in 2025 should matter to everyone. They're reshaping not just our politics, but the very fabric of how women and men interact, shaping how we love, how we vote, and whether we can build a future together at all. Telling the other side of the quote-unquote masculinity crisis is key to solving it, end quote. What exactly is the masculinity crisis? These days, I'm kind of thinking the whole world, regardless of gender or preference, is undergoing a crisis. Well, according to an AI overview on the web, a masculinity crisis is described as, quote, a perceived decline in traditional masculine roles and expectations, often attributed to societal shifts and evolving gender norms. This can manifest as anxiety among men about their place in the world, confusion about gender identity, and increased rates of social problems like loneliness, end quote. This is serious. This is mental illness, and it's also social illness. How did this crisis become also that of the woman who cares or the women who care for these men? Some women are saying that the cost of caring for these very needy men are too high, adversely affecting their own work, sense of self, and overall well-being. Yet some men counter that too much is expected of them in relationships, so of course they're going to need to vent within that relationship. Now, both genders are being negatively affected by this spiral, withdrawing and dating less. Some women are even opting to dating older men so as to avoid having to shoulder a younger man's emotional unavailability. Another source, The Guardian Online, states, quote, Stanford researchers argue that women take on the emotional burden of filling the gaps in men's social circles. As men's social connections decline, the invisible labor women invest in providing emotional support to men can be significant. The article goes on. Angelica Ferrara, lead author of the paper on Mankeeping and a postdoctoral scholar at the Clayman Institute for Gender Research at Stanford University, says her preliminary research suggests that some women may spend several hours a week managing the emotional and social well-being of the men in their lives, on top of their own jobs, children, friends, other aspects of the relationship that they have to manage, domestic things, taking care of the house, etc. She also breaks down the work of mankeeping into 3 components, and I'm quoting directly here. Number 1, emotional support. Women frequently become the emotional anchors for the men in their lives. They're the ones doing the listening, checking in, and offering support. Number 2, building social networks. Many women also take on the role of social coordinators, what I like to call the cruise director, ensuring that men around them have strong friendships and meaningful connections. From suggesting a catch-up with an old friend to organizing social gatherings, women help men foster deeper, more supportive friendships. And number 3, teaching social skills. Women often must teach men the interpersonal skills involved in supportive relationships, like how to ask thoughtful questions and carefully listen to the answers. Ferrara explains that while many women develop these skills at a young age, because of course that's what we are expected to do, boys, on the other hand, are not expected or they're even rewarded for not doing that emotional thing, or they're rewarded for developing emotional strengths. They're just not. As a result, women often find themselves responsible for teaching and passing them on to the men in their lives, end quote. Wow. I mean, that's a lot. The work of the woman is daunting. If a man's social networks are decreasing and he is not a good communicator or doesn't discuss his emotions, that's even more draining for the woman who tries to love him. So, how may the problem be addressed in a healthy manner for both genders, both on an individual level as well as societally at large? It seems to me that part of the cure involves a number of things, including, but certainly not limited to, compassion for self, compassion for each other, knowing yourself, your triggers and insecurities, establishing and adhering to boundaries, self-care, self-love, knowing that in the end, the answer is love, and perhaps finally, professional therapy. Mindset is a powerful thing, and the fight for our minds is fierce. We are so distracted by politics, economics, and social media. What's happening to our friends? What's happening to our families? What's happening to the world? William James, the psychologist, said, quote, "The greatest weapon against stress is our ability to choose one thought over another," end quote. Remembering this and drawing upon our inner strength may be one of the first steps toward healing, growth, and resilience. This concludes this episode of 15 Minutes of Fab on the Forever Fab Podcast. Thank you for listening, and until next time, stay beautiful and forever fabulous, inside and out.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Forever Fab, the podcast on fashion, the art of living, and all things beauty, curated by Dr. Shirley Madhere, MD. Live beautifully and help make the world a more beautiful place.